For 3,000 years, every species in the galaxy followed one simple rule. It was not written in any law book. No government enforced it, but everyone knew it, from the oldest empires to the youngest space travelers. The rule was simple and clear. Never bother the humans. Ambassador Ara of the Dominion had heard this warning since she was a child. Her grandmother used to tell her stories about the early days when humans first left their small blue planet. Back then, the older species had watched them with amusement. These soft creatures with no claws, no fangs, no natural armor, they seemed so weak and fragile. But then something strange happened. The humans learned fast, very fast. They took technology that other species needed centuries to master and improved it within decades. They adapted to every environment. They refused to accept any limit that nature placed on them. And when the hive tried to scare them into submission, as they did with all new species, the humans fought back so hard that the hive retreated to their home system and stayed there for 200 years. After that, the rule became absolute: leave the humans alone. Ara now sat in the observation deck of Station Meridian, a massive space station where species from across the galaxy came to trade and negotiate. She was watching the human delegation arrive for the annual Commerce Summit. Their ship was called the Constellation. It was old and simple, nothing special by galactic standards, but every other ship in the docking bay kept its distance. Every species gave the human vessel extra space, as if it might explode at any moment. Commander Cole stepped off the transport with his second-in-command, a woman named. They wore plain gray uniforms with no medals or decorations. They carried no visible weapons. They smiled politely at the gathered diplomats and spoke in calm, friendly voices. Ara watched them carefully. The humans looked so ordinary, so harmless. Their bodies were soft and breakable. A single blow from a warrior could crush their bones. And yet every ambassador in the room was nervous. Every diplomat kept checking how far they stood from the human delegation. The humans knew about the rule, of course. They had to know, but they never talked about it. They never bragged about it. They simply went about their business, trading fairly, keeping their promises, and living quietly in their corner of space. They asked for nothing. They demanded nothing. They just existed. And the entire galaxy breathed easier because of it. But far across the stars, in a distant arm of the galaxy, a young and ambitious species called the had just made a terrible decision. High Commander OK stood before the War Council. He was tall and powerful, with 4 muscular arms and thick gray skin covered in natural armor. His people had conquered a dozen worlds in the past century. They believed themselves to be the greatest warriors in the galaxy. The humans are a myth, OK declared, spreading his arms wide. They are a story that weak species tell to excuse their cowardice. We have studied their technology. We have analyzed their military strength. They are nothing special. He pointed at a holographic display showing human fleet movements. Look at their ships, old designs, small numbers. Their weapons are at least 2 generations behind ours. Their population is spread thin across a handful of worlds. They are vulnerable. Elder, the oldest member of the council, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Her scales had turned gray with age, and her eyes had seen many things that the young commander had not. The warnings exist for a reason, she said quietly. Every species that has challenged the humans has regretted it, every single one. OK made a harsh laughing sound. Old stories from old fools. They are destined for greatness. We will not hide in fear from creatures who evolved on a single rock in an ordinary star system. He changed the holographic display. Now it showed a small planet called Haven 3. It was a human colony on the frontier, far from Earth and its main defenses. The settlement held about 12,000 people, mostly farmers and miners. They had no military ships guarding them, no orbital weapons platforms, nothing but farming equipment and mining tools. We begin here, OK said, his voice filled with excitement. A simple raid. We take their resources, we eliminate witnesses, and we prove to the entire galaxy that humans are nothing to fear. After that, we expand. Within 10 years, they will control half of the Outer Rim territories." Elder closed her eyes. She had lived long enough to recognize the sound of disaster approaching. She knew that once this path was chosen, there would be no turning back. "You are making a mistake," she said. "A terrible mistake that I will still be paying for." OK ignored her. "The War Council will vote now, all in favor of the raid on Haven 3. One by one, the younger members of the council raised their hands. They were hungry for glory, hungry for conquest. They wanted to prove that they were the strongest species in the galaxy. The vote passed easily. Elder rose from her seat and walked slowly toward the door. Before she left, she turned back to face the council one last time. "May the void have mercy on us all," she whispered, "because the humans will not." 3 weeks later, a strike force of 12 warships gathered at the edge of human space. They had traveled in secret, avoiding all detection systems. High Commander OK commanded the fleet personally. He wanted to see the look on human faces when they realized they were not as safe as they thought. The ships powered up their weapons. The soldiers checked their armor. The pilots ran final calculations for the jump to Haven 3. In just a few hours, 12,000 innocent people would die. Farmers who had never held a weapon, children who had never seen a war, families who had traveled across the stars to build a new life on a distant world. None of them knew what was coming. And none of them knew that their deaths would wake a sleeping giant that the galaxy had spent 3,000 years trying to keep calm. They thought they were starting a small raid. They thought they were proving their strength. They thought they were showing the universe that humans could be challenged. They were wrong. They were starting a war that would echo across the stars for generations. They were about to learn why every species in the galaxy, no matter how powerful, had followed one simple rule for 3,000 years. Never bother the humans. Because when you hurt them, when you harm the ones they love, they do not forget. They do not forgive. And they do not stop until the lesson has been learned in the most painful way possible. The countdown to the attack began. The ships engaged their faster-than-light drives. And somewhere on Haven 3, a woman named Sophie Grant was making breakfast for her children, completely unaware that her world was about to end. Haven 3 was beautiful in the morning. 2 suns rose over the eastern mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Golden wheat fields stretched all the way to the horizon, swaying gently in the warm breeze. Birds that the colonists had brought from Earth sang in the trees near the farmhouses. Sophie Grant stood on her porch with a cup of coffee in her hands. She watched her 2 children, Jack and Emma, chasing each other through the tall grass. Their laughter echoed across the fields, mixing with the sounds of the morning. Her husband Daniel had left before dawn to check the water collectors in the southern fields. Their farm had belonged to the Grant family for 3 generations now, ever since Sophie's grandfather had claimed this land during the second wave of colonization. It was hard work, frontier farming. The soil was difficult, the weather was unpredictable, and supplies from Earth took months to arrive. But it was good work, honest work, and Sophie loved every minute of it. She had no idea that she had less than 2 hours to live. The strike force entered the star system at exactly 8:47 in the morning local time. 12 warships, far more than needed for attacking an undefended colony, but High Commander OK believed in using overwhelming force. He wanted the attack to be fast, brutal, and terrifying. The colony's communication tower detected the incoming ships automatically. It sent out a distress signal, a cry for help that raced across space at the speed of light. But the nearest human military outpost was 6 hours away. By the time anyone could respond, there would be nothing left to save. Sophie saw the ships when they dropped through the clouds. She had grown up on Earth and had seen military vessels before. She knew immediately that these were not human ships. The design was wrong. All sharp angles and aggressive lines, dark metal that seemed to absorb the morning light. She dropped her coffee cup. It shattered on the wooden porch. Then she ran for her children. The bombardment began at 9:02. Bright balls of plasma fire rained down from the sky, turning homes into craters and fields into ash. The ground shook with each impact, the air filled with smoke and screaming. Sophie reached her children just as the first wave of fire swept across the settlement. She grabbed them both, one under each arm, and ran toward the underground shelter behind the farmhouse. Her lungs burned, her legs ached, but she kept running. She almost made it. The plasma bolt hit the ground 10 meters behind her. The blast wave picked her up and threw her forward. She twisted in mid-air, trying to shield her children with her body. She felt heat, pain, then nothing at all. Daniel Grant was 3 kilometers away when he saw the smoke rising from his home. He dropped his tools and started running. He ran until his lungs felt like they were on fire. He ran until his legs stopped working and he fell to his knees. Then he got up and ran some more. When he finally reached the ruins of his farmhouse, he found nothing but scorched earth and silence. The shelter had been destroyed. The house was gone. Where his family had lived and laughed and loved, there was only a smoking crater. Daniel walked through the ashes for hours, searching for any sign of his wife and children. He called their names until his voice gave out. He dug through the rubble with his bare hands until his fingers bled. A soldier found him there as the sun was setting. Daniel was kneeling in the ashes, holding a small stuffed bear that had belonged to his daughter. His eyes were empty. His face showed no expression at all. The soldier raised his weapon, but something in the human's eyes made him hesitate for just a moment. There was no fear there, no anger, just a cold emptiness that seemed to swallow all the light around it. The soldier fired anyway. 6 hours later, the USS Horizon arrived in the system. Captain was a career naval officer with 20 years of experience. He had seen many things in his time, but nothing had prepared him for what he found at Haven 3. The colony was gone, not damaged, not evacuated, gone. Where 12,000 people had lived, there was only burned ground and scattered debris. The orbital sensors found no life signs, no survivors, nothing but death. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Price stood beside Captain on the bridge. Her face had gone pale. Her hands were shaking. "Sir," she said quietly, "we are detecting weapons signatures, plasma-based. The energy pattern does not match any human weapons. Can you identify the source?" Rachel worked at her console for a long moment. Then she looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of grief and anger. "Yes, sir. The weapons match military technology." Captain had never heard of that was not unusual. The galaxy was vast and new species appeared all the time. But whoever they were, they had just introduced themselves in the worst possible way. "Open a channel to Earth Command," he said. His voice was calm, but his hands were gripping the armrests of his chair so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. "Priority 1 transmission. Tell them what happened here. Tell them everything." The message reached Admiral Hayes at her desk in Geneva, on Earth. She was preparing for a boring meeting about military budgets when the transmission arrived. She read Captain's report once. Then she read it again. Then she sat very still for a very long time. Her aide, a young officer named Peter, noticed her expression. He had worked with the Admiral for 3 years and had never seen her look like this before. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" Looked up at him. She was 62 years old. She had served in the fleet for her entire adult life. She had helped build the peace that kept humanity safe from galactic interference. And now, some species she had never heard of had murdered 12,000 civilians for no reason she could understand. "Peter," she said slowly, "I need you to cancel all my appointments for the next month. Then I need you to contact every fleet commander in human space. Tell them to report for an emergency meeting. Tell them to bring everything they have." Peter's face went pale. "Ma'am, what should I tell them the meeting is about?" Admiral Hayes stood up. She straightened her uniform. Her eyes were hard as stone. "Tell them that someone made a very big mistake. Tell them that 12,000 of our people are dead. And tell them that it is time to remind the galaxy why they should never, ever bother the humans." She walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Geneva was beautiful in the afternoon light. People were walking in the parks. Children were playing in the streets. Life was going on as normal, unaware that everything had just changed. Somewhere out there, they were probably celebrating their victory. They probably thought they had proven something. They probably thought they had shown the galaxy that humans could be challenged. They had no idea what was coming. "God help them," whispered, "because we certainly will not." The galaxy had a long memory, but humanity had an even longer one. In the weeks after the Haven 3 massacre, something strange began to happen. Human ships scattered across dozens of star systems started to move. Cargo freighters changed their routes. Survey vessels returned to their home ports. Mining operations shut down without any explanation. Scientists left their research stations. Engineers abandoned construction projects. From the outside, it looked like humans everywhere were simply going home. Ambassador Aura watched the traffic patterns on her data screens with growing fear. She had seen military preparations before. Every species showed its strength from time to time, but this was different. This was quiet. This was organized. This was the calm before a terrible storm. She requested a meeting with Commander Cole, who was still aboard Station Meridian for the Commerce Summit. He agreed to see her in a private conference room. When she arrived, she found him sitting alone at a long table, his hands folded in front of him. His face showed no emotion at all. "Ambassador," he said politely, "how can I help you?" Ara settled into her chair. Her scales were changing colors, showing her anxiety despite her efforts to stay calm. "Commander, I have been watching human fleet movements. There seems to be a large relocation happening across your entire territory." "Is that so?" "Commander Cole, I am not your enemy. I have spent my whole career working for peace between our species, but I cannot help you if you do not speak honestly with me." Studied her for a moment. His eyes were cold and distant, like looking into deep space. "You have heard about Haven 3, he said. It was not a question. Only rumors. They have been bragging about a successful attack on a human frontier world. They claim they proved that humans are not as dangerous as everyone believes. They killed 12,000 people." His voice did not change, but something in the air seemed to grow colder. Farmers, workers, children, people who had never hurt anyone in their entire lives. Ara's scales went pale. "I did not know the full story. I am truly sorry, Commander." "Are you?" "Yes, and I am also afraid." She leaned forward in her chair. "I have read the history files, Commander. I know what happened to the last species that hurt human civilians. The Hive attacked a human transport ship and killed about 200 people. In response, humanity destroyed their entire military in less than 1 year. They have been hiding in their home system ever since." "The Hive surrendered," said quietly. "They apologized. They paid for their crimes. They have done none of those things." "Commander, I am asking you as someone who genuinely wants peace. What is humanity planning?" Stood up and walked to the window. Outside, ships from a dozen species moved through the docking bay. His own ship, the Constellation, was being loaded with equipment and supplies that Aura did not recognize. "Ambassador, do you know why every species in the galaxy fears us? Your ability to adapt, your unpredictability, your willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. Those are just symptoms. The real reason is much simpler." He turned to face her. We remember every wrong done to us, Every drop of blood spilled, every life lost, and we never ever forget. Ara felt a chill run through her body. If humanity strikes back too hard, it could destroy the peace we have maintained for 3,000 years. Other species might see it as aggression. They might form alliances against you. Then you had better make sure they understand something clearly. His voice was calm, almost gentle, which made it even more frightening. We did not start this. We did not want this, but we will finish it, and anyone who gets in our way will share the same fate as the... He walked past her toward the door. The Commerce Summit is over, Ambassador. I suggest you return to your people and explain the situation. The next few weeks are going to be very interesting. On Earth, the preparations continued. Admiral Hayes stood in the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. Dozens of screens surrounded her, showing fleet positions, supply lines, and strategic calculations. The machinery of war was coming to life after centuries of sleep. Her senior staff surrounded her. Admiral commanded the Third Fleet. Admiral Maria Santos led the Intelligence Division. General Victor was in charge of ground forces. Together, they controlled the combined military power of human civilization. What do we know about the... Hayes asked. Stepped forward and activated a holographic display. They achieved space travel about 500 years ago, very aggressive, very territorial. Their military doctrine focuses on overwhelming force and rapid conquest. How many ships do they have? Approximately 800 capital ships, 2,000 support vessels. Their technology is similar to ours in most areas, maybe slightly worse in engines and shields. Hayes nodded, and their home planet. Maria Santos took over. Prime is in the system. About 4 billion people live there. They have 12 colony worlds with another 2 billion combined. Most of their factories and shipyards are on the home planet and 3 major industrial colonies. Defense systems. Heavy orbital platforms around their home world. Planetary shields on their major colonies. A defense fleet of about 200 ships. Hayes absorbed all this information. She had spent decades hoping she would never need to use it, but now that the moment had arrived, she felt nothing but cold determination. Our mission is simple, she said. We are going to make an example of that will last for 10,000 years. When we are finished, no species in this galaxy will ever think about hurting a human being again. General cleared his throat. Admiral, what are the rules regarding civilian targets? Hayes turned to face him. We are not monsters, General. We do not murder innocent people, but we will destroy every military base, every shipyard, every weapons factory, every piece of equipment that supports their war machine. We will remove their ability to threaten anyone ever again. And if they surrender, then they will live, but they will pay, in resources, in territory, in decades of service. They will become a warning that parents tell their children on 1,000 worlds. She turned back to the displays. Begin the mobilization. I want every available ship at the staging area within 30 days. It is time to remind the galaxy what happens when you bother the humans. Across human space, the message spread. Retired officers received calls asking them to return to duty. Factories that had been making consumer goods switched to producing weapons and ammunition. Young people lined up at recruitment centers, eager to defend their species. The sleeping giant was waking up, and it was angry. In the command center, Admiral Hayes watched the preparations with grim satisfaction. She thought about the 12,000 people who had died on Haven 3. She thought about the families who would never see their loved ones again. She thought about the children who would never grow up. We are coming, she whispered to no one in particular. And when we arrive, you will learn why the galaxy fears us. You will learn why every species, no matter how powerful, follows one simple rule. You will learn what happens when you mistake our kindness for weakness. She clenched her fists at her sides. You will learn, and you will never forget. They detected the human fleet 3 days before it arrived. High Commander OK stood in his command center, staring at the tactical display. His 4 hands were trembling. His armored skin had gone pale. What he saw on that screen was impossible. It had to be impossible. Over 2,000 human warships were emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of space. Battle cruisers, carriers, destroyers, support vessels, more firepower than they had ever assembled in their entire history. "This cannot be real," he whispered. "Our intelligence said their fleet was small. Our spies told us they were weak." Elder walked into the command center. She had not been invited, but no one dared to stop her. Her old body moved slowly, but her eyes were sharp and clear. "Your intelligence showed you what the humans wanted you to see," she said quietly. "They have been hiding their true strength for centuries. Did you really think they survived in this galaxy by being weak?" OK turned on her, his 4 arms raised in anger. "We can still fight. We have defensive positions. We have orbital platforms. We have nothing," pointed at the display. "Look at them, High Commander, count them. 2,000 warships, and those are only the ones they are allowing us to see. They could have attacked without warning. Instead, they are showing us exactly what we face." "Why would they do that?" "Because they want us to understand. They want us to feel fear. They want us to know, in these final moments, exactly how badly we made a mistake." The human fleet advanced in perfect formation. They moved slowly, steadily, like a predator that knows its prey cannot escape. They passed the outer colonies without stopping, ignoring the desperate messages from local governors begging for mercy. They were heading straight for the heart of space. Admiral Hayes commanded from the bridge of the Reliance, the and most powerful battleship in the human fleet. She watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction as her ships moved into position. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we are receiving surrender requests from several colonies." "Note them in the record. Continue advancing." "Ma'am, they are offering complete surrender. No conditions." "The colonies can surrender. They were not responsible for the attack, but our destination is prime and our target is their military leadership. Nothing changes until those responsible face justice." The fleet moved on. The first major battle happened at the industrial colony of. The defending fleet consisted of about 50 warships. They formed a defensive line and prepared to fight. The battle lasted 7 minutes. When it ended, the defending fleet no longer existed. Human plasma cannons had torn through shields like they were made of paper. Human missiles had found every weakness in armor. Human pilots had and outfought their enemy at every turn. Admiral commanded this part of the attack from his ship, the Defiant. His tactical officers reported minimal damage to human vessels, a few scratches on the paint, nothing more. "Secure the orbital space," ordered. "Ground forces will take control of the shipyards. No civilian casualties unless absolutely necessary." The Marines landed 3 hours later. General Victor led the assault personally. His soldiers moved through the industrial complex with perfect precision. Workers ran from them in terror, dropping their tools and fleeing for shelter. The Marines let them go. They were not interested in factory workers. By sunset, the largest shipyard in space was under human control. The very facility that had built the ships used to attack Haven 3 was being taken apart piece by piece. Back on Prime, OK watched the reports come in. Each update was worse than the last. Colonies falling, fleets destroyed, factories captured. Everything they had built over 5 centuries was being erased in days. "We need to negotiate," one of his advisors urged. "Offer them money, territory, anything they want." "They will not negotiate," said. "Not with us. Not with anyone who helped plan the attack." OK stared at her. "What are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting that the only way to save our people is for those responsible to surrender. You, High Commander, your staff, everyone who voted for this war. You want me to give myself up. I want you to take responsibility for what you have done. Perhaps, if the humans see justice being served, they will show mercy to the innocent millions who had nothing to do with your decisions. OK made a bitter sound. You think they care about justice. They are not here for justice. They are here for revenge. Perhaps, but revenge can be satisfied. If you run, if you hide, if you make them hunt you down, they will not stop until every world burns. Is your pride worth the death of our entire species? The old commander said nothing for a long time, but somewhere deep in his heart, he already knew the answer. The human fleet arrived at Prime on the 42nd day of the war. 2,000 ships formed a sphere around the planet, blocking every escape route. Nothing could get in or out without human permission. Admiral Hayes broadcast a single message to the surface. This is Admiral Hayes of Earth Defense Command. We are here for those responsible for the attack on Haven 3. Surrender them within 24 hours and this war ends. Refuse, and we will take them ourselves. The choice belongs to you. The War Council met for the last time that night. Half the members had already fled. The rest sat in terrified silence as OK entered the chamber. I will surrender myself, he announced. Along with every officer who planned or carried out the attack, I ask only that you protect my family after I am gone. Elder nodded slowly. We will do everything we can. OK looked around the chamber one last time. These walls had witnessed his greatest triumphs. Now they would witness his final defeat. I was wrong, he said quietly. I thought we could challenge the humans and prove ourselves superior. Instead, I have brought destruction to everything I swore to protect. Remember this lesson, all of you. Remember what happens when pride defeats wisdom. He turned and walked out of the chamber, toward the landing platform where a human shuttle was already waiting. As he stepped aboard, he looked up at the sky. Thousands of human ships hung there like stars, silent and patient. They had come so far to deliver this lesson. They had spent so much to teach it. And now, finally, they were ready to learn. The shuttle doors closed. The engines activated. And High Commander OK began the longest journey of his life, from the leader of an empire to a prisoner awaiting judgment. Behind him, they looked up at the same sky and wondered what their future would hold. The humans had proven their point. The galaxy had received its message. Now came the hardest part, living with the consequences. The trial took place on Earth, in the rebuilt city of Geneva. Representatives from every species in the galaxy came to watch. The proceedings were broadcast across thousands of star systems, translated into countless languages, seen by trillions of beings on countless worlds. The charges were simple: murder, war crimes, crimes against humanity. The evidence was overwhelming. Video recordings from combat equipment showed the complete destruction of Haven 3. Orbital data confirmed the death count. Testimony from the handful of survivors painted a picture of horror that no one could ignore. Daniel Grant was one of those survivors. He had been found by rescue teams 3 days after the massacre, wandering through the ruins of his farm, still searching for his family. The doctors said his mind had broken under the weight of his grief. He spent months in a hospital, slowly learning how to function again, learning how to exist in a world without his wife and children. Now he sat in the witness chair, facing the creatures who had destroyed everything he loved. The prosecutor was a woman named Susan Blake. She spoke gently, knowing how fragile Daniel still was. "Mr. Grant, can you tell us what you lost that day?" Daniel's voice was empty and hollow. "My wife Sophie, my son Jack, my daughter Emma, my home, my future, everything that mattered." "What do you want from these proceedings?" Daniel looked across the courtroom at OK. The commander sat in his special chair, designed to accommodate his 4 arms and unusual body shape. He met Daniel's gaze without looking away. Whatever else he was not a coward. "I want to understand," Daniel said. "I want to know why." The courtroom fell completely silent. No one moved, no one breathed. Slowly, OK rose to his feet. His guards moved toward him, but he raised his hands to show he meant no threat. He simply wanted to speak. "Because I was arrogant," he said. "Because I believed the stories about your species were lies. Because I wanted glory and power and conquest, and I did not care who suffered for it." He looked directly at Daniel. "There is no good reason for what I did, no explanation that makes it acceptable. I ordered the destruction of your home and the murder of your family because I saw you as obstacles, not as people. I was wrong, and if my death can bring you any peace, then I accept it willingly." Daniel stared at him for a long time. The entire courtroom waited to see what the broken farmer would do. Finally, Daniel stood. He walked to the railing that separated the witnesses from the defendants. He stood there, close enough to touch the being who had murdered his family. "Killing you will not bring them back," he said quietly. "Nothing will ever bring them back. But maybe watching you live with what you have done, knowing that your people will spend generations paying for your mistakes, maybe that is a better punishment than death." He turned and walked out of the courtroom without looking back. The verdict came 3 days later, guilty on all charges. OK and his senior officers were sentenced to life imprisonment on a human penal colony. They would spend the rest of their days surrounded by the species they had tried to destroy, reminded every moment of how badly they had failed. The nation received a harsher sentence. They were required to pay money equal to their entire economy for the next 50 years. Their military was reduced to a tiny defensive force that could barely protect a single planet. Their colonies were placed under human supervision. Their people were forbidden from building warships or training soldiers. But the true punishment was something that could not be measured in money or ships. For the rest of history, they would be known as the species that attacked humanity and lost. Their children would learn about the massacre of Haven 3 in school. Their diplomats would face distrust and contempt wherever they went. Their culture would carry the shame like a wound that never healed. Ambassador Ara visited Commander Cole one last time before leaving Station Meridian. She found him in the same conference room where they had spoken before the war. "It is finished," she said. Nodded slowly, "for now. The galaxy is watching. Every species has learned the lesson you wanted them to learn. No one will bother the humans again." That is what they said 3,000 years ago, and then that happened. Walked to the window and looked out at the stars. "We do not want to be feared, Ambassador. We never wanted that. We just want to live in peace, raise our families, explore the universe. Is that really too much to ask?" Ara joined him at the window. "Perhaps not. But the galaxy is vast and old, and there will always be those who mistake kindness for weakness." "Then we will be ready. We always are." She studied his reflection in the glass. "May I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "How do you do it? How do you maintain such control? Your species has the power to rule the entire galaxy. Why do you not use it?" Was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. "Because we remember what it was like to be weak. We remember being alone on a small blue planet, looking up at the stars and wondering if anyone else was out there. We remember the fear of the unknown, the hope for friendship, the dream of a future where all species could live together in peace." He turned to face her. "We could conquer the galaxy, Ambassador, but that is not who we want to be. We want to be the species that builds bridges, not walls, that offers friendship, not threats, that remembers our own history well enough to treat others with respect. And when someone forces your hand, when they make you choose between your values and your survival." His expression grew hard. "Then we remind them why they should have left us alone, and we hope that someday the lesson will finally stick." He offered his hand. Ara took it. Her scales were cool against his warm skin. Safe travels, Ambassador. May we meet again under better circumstances. May we indeed, Commander. She left Station Meridian that afternoon. As she watched the station shrink in her, she thought about everything she had witnessed. The humans were still a mystery, still unpredictable, still capable of terrible violence and extraordinary kindness in equal measure. Perhaps that was what made them unique. They were not perfect, but they tried to be better. They carried their darkness with them, but they never let it define them. And as long as the galaxy remembered what happened to as long as that story served as a warning to the foolish and the proud, perhaps there would be peace. At least for a little while. On Earth, Daniel Grant returned to his family's land. The farm was gone, but the soil remained. He stood in the field where his house had once stood and looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, among the countless stars that were paying for their crimes, justice had been served. The war was over. But Sophie was still gone. Jack and Emma were still gone, and no amount of revenge or punishment could ever fill the emptiness they had left behind. Daniel knelt in the dirt and planted a single seed. It was wheat, the same crop his family had grown for 3 generations. Life continuing despite death, hope surviving despite despair. He would rebuild, slowly, painfully, one day at a time, because that was what humans did. They survived, they adapted, they kept going no matter how much it hurt. And they never, ever forgot.